Dr. Carroll was an alien scientist who lived far from the bright alien city. His laboratory was hidden under the rocky hills, covered with strange red sand and tall crystal stones. No one came here. No one asked questions. And that was the way Carl wanted it. Inside the lab, machines hummed quietly, screens flashed green light, and glass tubes lined the walls. Inside the tubes grew plants, but these were not normal plants. Their roots glowed with a faint blue light, and their leaves shimmered as if they were alive with energy. Every day these plants grew taller, faster, stronger, and every day Carol whispered to himself, "Please, stop growing." Carol had created them with hope, not fear. He wanted to solve hunger, to give his people food that would never run out. The growth serum he designed was supposed to make crops grow fast. But something had gone wrong. The plants were not stopping. They grew even when there was no water, no soil, no light. They grew on metal, they grew on stone, they grew on the very walls of the lab. At first, Carol thought it was a gift. But then he saw the roots breaking glass. He saw the vines moving, on their own like snakes searching for prey. He realized this was not life he had made. This was something else. Something that wanted to spread. He spent long hours trying to cut them. He used fire, he used cold, he even used energy beams, but every time he burned or cut, the plants grew back stronger than before. Sometimes he thought he could hear faint whispers from the vines, like 1,000 voices saying the same word, grow. Fear began to live inside Carol. He kept the secret hidden. He locked his lab and lied to the officials. When they asked about his work, he smiled and said, "All is well." But inside he knew nothing was well. He could not hide it forever. Late at night, Carol sat at his desk, his 4 alien eyes glowing in the dim light. He wrote in his journal, his hands shaking, "I cannot control them anymore. The serum has become a curse. I must find help." But who could he trust? His own people would punish him for failure. They would not listen. They would not forgive. He turned to the glowing tubes again. One of the plants inside pressed against the glass, its roots spread like fingers, tapping slowly. Tap, tap, tap. It was almost as if it wanted out. Carol stepped back, his voice shaking. "Please, make it stop growing. I can't hide it anymore." For a moment, silence filled the lab. Then a crack appeared in the glass. Thin, small, but enough to make Carol's heart beat faster. He rushed forward, sealing the crack with liquid metal. But the roots pressed harder. The glass bent like it was only a toy in the plant's grip. Carol gasped, sweat forming on his pale alien skin. He knew the truth now. The plants were no longer just experiments. They were alive and they wanted freedom. He looked at the communication device on his desk. His hand hovered over the button. He wanted to call for help, but he stopped. If his people discovered this, they would destroy him before they destroyed the plants. He had broken their laws, and worse, he had created something stronger than them. The air in the lab grew heavy. The roots pressed again, harder this time. Carol backed away, his mind screaming. He thought about running, leaving everything behind. But where would he go? The plants were growing too fast. They would follow. They would spread. He sat down, holding his head in his hands. Maybe only humans can help, he whispered to himself. Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy, but their history was different. They had fought impossible wars. They had survived things no other species could. Perhaps only a human could stop what he had made. Carol stared at the glowing vines once more. They pulsed with light, like beating hearts. He felt as if they were watching him, waiting. His hands shook as he closed his journal. He would need to find a human, and soon. The machines beeped louder, warning him. The growth rate was rising again. Another crack appeared, then another. Carol stumbled back, whispering the same words again and again. "Please, stop growing, please, and stop growing." But the plants did not listen. They never listened. They only grew, faster and faster. And in the deep silence of the lab, the alien scientist knew. The secret could not stay hidden much longer. The lab was quiet, but not for long. Dr. Carroll walked slowly through the rows of glass tubes, his hands shaking. Each tube glowed with soft blue light. And inside, the plants pressed harder against the glass. It had only been one night since the cracks first appeared. Now new lines spread like spider webs across the tubes. Carroll bent closer, his alien eyes narrowing. The roots inside were not just roots anymore. They moved in patterns, weaving, curling, twisting. It was as if they were thinking. The leaves pressed flat against the glass, quivering as though they were breathing. He stepped back, fear rising in his chest. No one had seen this but him. No one knew the danger. He thought about sealing the tubes with stronger metal, but he knew deep inside that the plants would break free anyway. The first sign came when one of the vines reached through a tiny crack, thin as a finger, glowing faintly. It slid down the glass like a drop of water. Searching. Carroll froze. His breath stuck in his throat. The vine brushed against the floor and stopped. Then, slowly, it turned, as if it sensed him. Carroll grabbed a laser cutter and slashed at the vine. The bright beam cut it in half. The piece dropped to the floor, smoking. But before he could breathe, the vine twitched, it curled, grew, and rejoined with the other half in seconds. The plant healed, stronger than before. Carroll's four eyes widened. His hands shook as he whispered, "Impossible." He backed away, the laser cutter slipping from his hand. The machines beeped loudly, flashing red warnings. Growth speed, 120%. The screen read. It was doubling, tripling, unstoppable. He turned and ran to the main console, typing fast. He needed to contain it, maybe with cold. He activated the freezing system, releasing sharp frost through the tubes. For a moment, the plant slowed, covered in white ice. But then the ice cracked, melting away as if heat came from the vines themselves. The plants pushed harder. The glass groaned. Carroll pressed his back to the wall. He could hear the sound now, a faint rustling, like leaves moving in wind. But there was no wind here. The sound was inside the lab, inside the tubes. He realized the plants were making the sound. They were moving against the glass, whispering softly. Grow. The word came faint, almost inside his head. He shook it off, telling himself it was only his imagination. But the sound returned. Stronger. Grow, Carroll screamed, smashing buttons, trying every command he could. Fire, acid, energy waves, nothing worked. Every attack only fed them. The vines absorbed the fire. The acid turned to steam. The energy made them glow brighter. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Carroll lost track, his body heavy with fear. The lab lights flickered, shadows dancing across the walls. He knew the first. Signs were no longer hidden. He knew the danger was now too great to control. At last, he slumped into his chair, staring at the tubes. The roots pressed against the glass like faces. Shapes formed, not clear but almost like eyes. Dozens of glowing eyes staring at him from inside the vines. His voice cracked as he whispered, "What are you?" The machines beeped again. Containment. Breach. 12%, the screen read. One tube hissed as its seal broke slightly. Blue mist filled the air, carrying the smell of earth and metal. Carroll coughed, his lungs burning. He covered his mouth, his skin itching from the strange mist. The vine inside pushed further. It touched the floor, crawling across the lab like a snake. It headed straight for him. He grabbed a heavy pipe and smashed it down. The vine snapped but then split into two. Now there were two vines moving toward him. Carroll stumbled back, panic filling him. He slammed the emergency shield button. Metal walls slid down, cutting off the vines from the rest of the lab. For a moment silence returned, but his relief was short. He heard scraping, scratching. The vines were climbing the shield from the other side. It would not hold them long. Carroll sat at his desk, breathing fast. He pulled out his journal again, his hand shaking as he wrote. They are learning. They are not just plants. They heal, they adapt, they want to escape. He paused, sweat dripping down his face. Maybe they are calling to something, or maybe they are waiting for me to make a mistake. The lights flickered again. For a second, everything went dark. In the darkness, he saw them, dozens of glowing eyes staring through the cracks. When the lights returned, the eyes were gone. But the image burned inside his mind. He closed his journal and whispered, "I cannot stop the first sign soon the world will see, and when that happens, it will already be too late." Outside, in the deep silence of the alien night, the ground trembled, slightly. The roots were already reaching farther than the lab, and Dr. Carroll knew the true beginning had only just arrived. The meeting place was quiet, hidden deep inside the lower levels of the alien city. Dim blue lights flickered on the walls, and pipes hissed with steam. Captain Ray, the human visitor, sat on a metal bench, waiting. His eyes were sharp, watching the shadows. He had been warned that an alien scientist wanted to meet him in secret, but no one had said why. Footsteps echoed down the corridor, slow and heavy. Dr. Carroll appeared, his cloak wrapped tightly around him. His alien eyes darted, left and right, making sure no one had followed. When he reached Ray, he lowered his head and whispered, "I should not be here. If they discover this, I will be executed." Ray leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "Then tell me why you called me." Carroll's hands shook as he pulled out a small device. He pressed a button, and a floating image appeared between them. The image showed glowing plants trapped inside glass tubes. Their roots moved like snakes. Their leaves shivered like they were alive. Ray frowned, leaning closer. "What am I looking at?" Carroll's voice broke as he answered, "My mistake, my curse, my creation." He sat down across from Ray, his cloak falling back to reveal his pale, tired face. He looked older than his years, worn by sleepless nights. With a trembling hand, he began his confession. "I was chosen to create a growth serum. It was supposed to save my people. We needed food, resources, something that would end hunger forever." He paused, his eyes wet with shame. "And I succeeded, but not in the way I hoped." Ray crossed his arms, listening. Carroll continued, "The plants grew too fast. At first I was proud. They healed, they multiplied, they could grow on anything." His voice dropped lower. "But then, they began to think. They began to move. And they never stopped growing." Ray raised an eyebrow. "Plants that think," he said, his tone half skeptical, half curious. "Why not tell your leaders?" Carroll flinched, his four eyes looking away. "My leaders do not forgive failure. They would destroy me. They would destroy the lab, and maybe they would fail to destroy the plants." Ray tapped his finger on the bench. "Why tell me then? Why a human?" Carroll leaned forward, desperation in his voice. "Because humans fight impossible things. I have read your history, your wars, your survival. You face monsters and you win. My people, they fear what they cannot control. But you adapt." The human studied him, his face unreadable. Inside he felt a chill. If what Carroll said was true, then this was more than an alien experiment gone wrong. It was a threat, one that could spread beyond planets, beyond systems. Carroll pulled out his journal, pages filled with drawings of roots, vines, and glowing eyes. He pushed it into Ray's hands. "Here, these are my notes. Look at them. Read them. You will understand." Ray flipped through the pages, his expression hardening. He saw sketches of vines breaking metal, diagrams of roots spreading like rivers across cities. One page made him stop. It showed a huge shape underground, like a brain made of plants, glowing with light. Next to it, Carroll had written in shaky letters, "It whispers to me." Ray closed the journal slowly. His voice was low, almost a growl. "You created something alive. Something that wants more than food." Carroll's hands gripped the edge of the bench, his knuckles pale. "Yes, it wants freedom, it wants space, and it will not stop. If it escapes, it will spread across worlds, feeding, growing, consuming, until nothing remains." For a moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the hiss of steam in the pipes. Ray leaned closer, his eyes locked on Carroll's. "You said it whispers. What does it say?" Carroll's face went pale, his voice barely a whisper. "One word. Always the same word, grow." Ray felt a chill down his spine. He looked at the desperate alien, broken and afraid. Part of him wanted to walk away. This was not his problem, not his planet, not his mistake. But another part of him knew better. If Carol was right, then, soon it would be his problem. It would be everyone's problem. Before he could speak, the ground trembled slightly. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Carol's head snapped up, fear flashing in his eyes. "They are breaking through faster than I thought," he whispered. "I cannot hide it anymore. Please, you must help me." Ray stood, gripping the journal tightly. His voice was steady, but his mind raced with questions. "If you're telling the truth, then we need a plan. We need to see this thing for ourselves." Carol nodded quickly. "Yes, I will take you to the lab. But we must be careful. If the government learns, we will both be dead. And if the plants sense us, they will know." Ray frowned. "Know what?" Carol looked at him with hollow eyes. "They will know we are trying to stop them." The words hung in the air, heavy with dread. Ray tightened his grip on the journal. He knew now this was not just a confession. This was a warning. And he was no longer just a visitor. He was part of the fight. The steam hissed louder, almost like a whisper in the dark. "Grow!" Ray and Carol turned toward the sound. Neither spoke. Both knew the danger was already closer than they had feared. The walk to the hidden lab was long and tense. Captain Ray followed Dr. Carol through narrow tunnels beneath the alien city. Pipes dripped with water, and strange insects crawled along the walls. Neither of them spoke for a while, but both carried heavy thoughts. Ray's mind was filled with questions. He had seen the images, he had read the notes, but he still did not fully trust Carol. Why confess to him, a stranger, a human? Why wait until now, when the danger was already breaking free? Finally, Ray broke the silence. "You said you made this serum to save your people, but how do I know you're not hiding something more?" Carol stopped walking, his back stiff. Slowly, he turned to face Ray. His 4 alien eyes glowed faintly in the dim tunnel light. "What do you mean?" he asked carefully. Ray stepped closer, his voice sharp. "You wait until the plants are out of control before you call for help. You choose a human, not your leaders. Why? What aren't you telling me?" Carol's jaw tightened, his hands clenching. "I told you the truth. My people would kill me for failure. They would erase me. They would erase my work, but I could not let it go." Ray narrowed his eyes. "That sounds less like fear and more like pride." Carol's gaze dropped to the ground. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he whispered, "You are right. At first, I was proud. I wanted to be remembered. I wanted to be the one who saved billions. But pride turned to fear when I saw what I had unleashed." Ray studied him, still unconvinced. "Or maybe you still want something out of this. Maybe you want to use me. Maybe you want me to clean up your mistake while you hide." Carol's eyes flashed with anger. "No, you do not understand. I am already marked, already cursed. If the plants do not kill me, my people will. I called you because I have no one left to turn to." The two stared at each other in the darkness. The silence stretched until the sound of rumbling cut through. The ground shook slightly under their feet. Ray looked around sharply. "What was that?" Carol's face paled. "They are spreading again." The word sent a cold shiver through Ray's body, but he still didn't let go of his suspicion. "Tell me one thing," he demanded. "Why do you think humans can stop this? You've studied us fine. But what makes you believe we're different?" Carol's voice cracked, his desperation clear. "Because humans do not give up. Because when you face something stronger, bigger, impossible, you fight anyway. My people run, my people hide. But you, humans, find a way. That is why I chose you." Ray held his stare for a long moment. Part of him wanted to believe. Part of him still doubted. He had seen aliens lie before, manipulate, use humans as tools. But something in Carol's trembling voice felt different. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was truth, maybe both. They walked again deeper into the tunnels. Ray noticed scratches along the walls, thin lines, curling and twisting. He touched one, his fingers coming away with faint blue dust. He frowned. These marks, they weren't here before, were they? Carol froze, staring at the scratches. His voice dropped to a whisper. No, they weren't. The realization hit them both. The plants were already here, creeping through the tunnels, following them, or maybe leading them. Ray gripped his sidearm, scanning the shadows. Carol's breathing grew louder, faster. "They are watching," he muttered. "They know." Ray grabbed his arm, pulling him forward. "Keep moving. If they're down here, we don't have much time." As they rushed deeper, Ray's suspicion did not fade. It only grew. If Carol had hidden the danger this long, what else was he hiding? What if this was all part of something bigger? What if the plants weren't just an accident? The thought chilled him. He stopped suddenly, forcing Carol to halt too. "One last question," Ray said in a hard voice. "Did you ever try to communicate with them?" Carol's eyes widened. He hesitated before answering. They already communicate with me. Not with words, not the way we speak. But I hear them. In my mind. Always the same command. Always the same hunger." Ray's jaw clenched. "And you didn't think to mention this earlier?" Carol's voice broke. "If I had told you from the start, you would have walked away, and I cannot face this alone." The tension between them was heavy. Ray felt anger, suspicion, but also a strange pull. If Carol was truly connected to the plants, then maybe he was the key to stopping them. Or maybe he was already lost, already controlled. The ground shook again, harder this time. A low, cracking sound echoed through the tunnels. Blue light leaked. Through the walls, glowing like veins, Ray raised his weapon. Carol whispered in terror. "They are here." The walk to the hidden lab was long and tense. Captain Ray followed Dr. Carol through narrow tunnels beneath the alien city. Pipes dripped with water, and strange insects crawled along the walls. Neither of them spoke for a while, but both carried. Heavy thoughts. Ray's mind was filled with questions. He had seen the images. He had read the notes, but he still did not fully trust Carol. Why confess to him, a stranger, a human? Why wait until now, when the danger was already breaking free? Finally, Ray broke the silence. "You said you made this serum to save your people, but how do I know you're not hiding something more?" Carol stopped walking, his back stiff. Slowly, he turned to face Ray. His 4 alien eyes glowed faintly in the dim tunnel light. "What do you mean?" he asked carefully. Ray stepped closer, his voice sharp. "You wait until the plants are out of control before you call for help. You choose a human, not your leaders. Why, what aren't you telling me?" Carol's jaw tightened, his hands clenching. "I told you the truth, my people. Would kill me for failure, they would erase me, they would erase my work, but I could not let it go." Ray narrowed his eyes. "That sounds less like fear and more like pride." Carol's gaze dropped to the ground. For a moment he said nothing. Then he whispered, "You are right. At first I was proud. I wanted to be remembered. I wanted to be the one who saved billions. But pride turned to fear when I saw what I had unleashed." Ray studied him, still unconvinced. "Or maybe you still want something out of this. Maybe you want to use me. Maybe you want me to clean up your mistake while you hide." Carol's eyes flashed with anger. "No, you do not understand. I am already marked, already cursed. If the plants do not kill me, my people will. I called you because I have no one left to turn to." The two stared at each other in the darkness. The silence stretched until the sound of rumbling cut through. The ground shook slightly under their feet. Ray looked around sharply. "What was that?" Carol's face paled. "They are spreading again." The word sent a cold shiver through Ray's body, but he still didn't let go of his suspicion. "Tell me one thing," he demanded. "Why do you think humans can stop this? You've studied us. Fine. But what makes you believe we're different?" Carol's voice cracked, his desperation clear. "Because humans do not give up. Because when you face something stronger, bigger, impossible, you fight anyway. My people run. My people hide. But you, humans, find a way. That is why I chose you." Ray held his stare for a long moment. Part of him wanted to believe. Part of him still doubted. He had seen aliens lie before, manipulate, use humans as tools. But something in Carol's trembling voice felt different. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was truth, maybe both. They walked again, deeper into the tunnels. Ray noticed scratches along the walls, thin lines, curling and twisting. He touched one, his fingers coming away with Faint blue dust, he frowned. These marks? They weren't here before, were they? Carol froze, staring at the scratches, his voice dropped to a whisper. No. They weren't. The realization hit them both. The plants were already here, creeping through the tunnels, following them, or maybe leading them. Ray gripped his sidearm, scanning the shadows. Carol's breathing grew louder, faster. They are watching, he muttered. They know. Ray grabbed his arm, pulling him forward. Keep moving, if they're down here. We don't have much time. As they rushed deeper, Ray's suspicion did not fade, it only grew. If Carol had hidden the danger this long, what else was he hiding? What if this was all part of something bigger? What if the plants weren't just an accident? The thought chilled him. He stopped suddenly, forcing Carol to halt too. One last question, Ray said in a hard voice. Did you ever try to communicate with them? Carol's eyes widened. He hesitated before answering. They already communicate with me. Not with words, not the way we speak. But I hear them, in my mind. Always the same command. Always the same hunger. Ray's jaw clenched. And you didn't think to mention this earlier, Carol's voice broke. If I had told you from the start, you would have walked away, and I cannot face this alone. The tension between them was heavy. Ray felt anger, suspicion, but also a strange pull. If Carol was truly connected to the plants, then maybe he was the key to stopping them. Or maybe he was already lost, already controlled. The ground shook again, harder this time. A low cracking sound echoed through the tunnels. Blue light leaked. Through the walls, glowing like veins, Ray raised his weapon. Carol whispered in terror. They are here. From the cracks in the stone, roots began to slide out, glowing faintly. They writhed like living snakes, spreading across the floor. Ray fired, the shots burning pieces of root. But each piece split, each piece grew back. Carol stumbled backward, his voice trembling. Do you see now? Do you see why I needed you? Ray gritted his teeth, his suspicion still alive but buried under urgency. He had no more time for questions. The only choice left was to fight. The lab door slid open with a long hiss. Captain Ray and Dr. Carroll stepped inside, and the smell hit them instantly. The air was heavy, thick with a strange mix of earth, metal, and burning wires. It felt alive, as if the air itself was breathing. The glowing tubes lined the walls, but many of them were no longer whole. Cracks ran across the glass like lightning scars. Some were empty, broken, dripping with blue liquid that spread across the floor. The vines had escaped. They were everywhere, crawling along the ceiling, wrapping around machines, sliding across. The floor like rivers of light. Ray raised his weapon, his eyes darting from shadow to shadow. The roots glowed faintly, moving slowly but with purpose. They were not random, not wild. They were searching, hunting. Carol's hands shook as he pressed buttons on the console. Screens flickered, showing growth rates far beyond anything he had ever recorded. 200%, 300%. He whispered in horror. They are feeding on the city's power lines. Ray cursed under his breath. So they're not just growing, they're feeding. Before Carol could answer, the ground shook beneath them. The sound of metal twisting filled the air. One of the tubes shattered completely, glass exploding. Across the room from it, a thick vine burst out, glowing bright, its roots slamming into the floor. It whipped around like a living whip, smashing a heavy machine into the wall. Ray fired, the blast burning a chunk of the vine away, but the glowing roots only split and reformed. Two vines where one had been. They writhed, twisting toward him. Carol screamed, stumbling backward. They cannot be killed, not like this. Ray grabbed him, pulling him away from the shattered tube. Then tell me how to stop them. Carol's voice cracked as he answered. I don't know anymore, nothing works. Fire, ice, acid, all of it feeds them. The vines lashed again, smashing a table, scattering tools across the floor. Blue liquid spilled and sizzled, burning holes into the ground. Ray ducked behind a console, dragging Carol with him. The vines slammed against the metal, denting it like paper. Ray's mind raced. If fighting only made them stronger, then the answer wasn't brute force. But he had no time to think. The vines were multiplying, filling the lab, wrapping around everything. The lights flickered, shadows twisting across the walls. The air pulsed with one sound, faint but clear. Grow. Ray gritted his teeth, his heart pounding. It wasn't just sound anymore, it was inside his head. The plants were whispering directly into his mind. He shook it off, focusing on survival. Where's the power core? He shouted over the noise. If they're feeding on energy, maybe we can cut it off. Carol's eyes widened. Yes, if we starve them, maybe they will weaken, but the core is below the lab. If they reach it, they could drain the entire city in minutes. As if on cue, the floor cracked open. Glowing roots pushed through, splitting the stone. They slithered downward, reaching for the deeper tunnels. Ray fired again, forcing them back for a moment, but each blast only slowed them, never stopped them. Carol stumbled toward the console, his fingers flying over the keys. He activated the emergency lockdown. Steel shutters dropped across the doors and windows, sealing them inside. Ray turned to him in shock. You trapped us in here. Carol's voice shook. If we let them escape now, it's over for the entire city. We must hold them here, even if it kills us. Ray cursed. But he knew the alien was right. If the vines spread beyond the lab, millions would be at risk. Still, suspicion lingered in his mind. Was this bravery or desperation from a man already doomed? The vines struck again, smashing into the console, sparks flying. Carol was thrown backward, hitting the wall hard. Ray pulled him up, blood running down the alien's face. Carol's voice was weak. They are learning faster. They know we are fighting back. Ray fired in every direction, trying to hold them off. But the vines were endless, splitting, reforming, moving like an unstoppable tide. Machines collapsed, the floor cracked, the walls bent under pressure. The whole lab was shaking. Ray grabbed Carol by the arm, dragging him toward the emergency elevator at the far end of the room. We can't hold this place. We need to regroup. Find another way. Carol shook his head weakly. If we leave, they will spread. They will... Before he could finish, a massive vine burst from the center of the floor. It was thicker than a tree trunk, glowing so bright it hurt to look at. It rose high, smashing through the ceiling, tearing metal apart like paper. Ray and Carol stared in horror as the massive vine pulsed with light. For the first time, it made a new sound. Not just grow, but something deeper, louder, free. Carol's face went pale, his voice a whisper of terror. They are aware, they know they are trapped, and now they want freedom. Ray pulled him toward the elevator, blasting at the smaller vines that crawled toward them. The massive vine swung down, smashing into the ground, sending a shockwave across the room. Metal bent, glass shattered, fire burst from broken machines. The lab was becoming a war zone. The elevator doors opened just in time. Ray shoved Carol inside, blasting the controls to seal the door. The elevator shook as it descended, the sound of smashing vines echoing above them. Carol slumped against the wall, his face pale. It has begun. The first breakout, once they spread, no world will be safe. Ray clenched his fists, staring upward. He didn't know if he could trust Carol. He didn't know if there was a way to stop the plants. But he knew one thing. This fight was no longer about one alien's mistake. It was about survival, and the first battle had just begun. The elevator doors opened with a heavy groan. Captain Ray stepped out first, his weapon raised, scanning the empty tunnel. Dr. Carroll followed slowly, leaning against the wall, his body weak, his face pale from exhaustion. The sound of vines smashing the lab above still echoed in their ears, but down here the silence was heavy, thick, waiting. Ray's eyes narrowed. They're not chasing us, not yet, he said. That means they're spreading in another direction. Carroll nodded shakily. They want the core, if they reach. If the city will fall within hours, Ray paced back and forth, his mind racing. Fighting the vines head-on was useless, he already knew that. Every attack made them stronger, every strike fed their hunger. He needed something different, something human. He crouched down, pulling a small case from his belt. Inside were old-style earth tools, wires, explosives, a compact welder. Carroll stared at them in confusion. Primitive, he muttered. Ray gave a sharp grin. Primitive works when smart science fails. Carol tilted his head. What are you planning? Ray began pulling wires, connecting them, his hands moving fast. We can't destroy them, but we can outsmart them. They move like soldiers, always forward, always hungry. So we give them what they want. Carol frowned. What do you mean? Ray tightened a screw and looked up. We set a trap. We feed them energy more than they can handle, but instead of power, we feed them explosives. Carol's eyes widened. You want to lure them? But what if it makes them grow faster? Ray shrugged, his voice steady. Then, we're dead anyway. Better to gamble than to wait for them to eat the city alive. For a long moment, Carol said nothing. Then slowly, he nodded. You sound reckless. But maybe recklessness is what we need. The two began working together. Ray connected his explosives to the old power lines in the tunnel. Carol hacked into the city's grid, his trembling fingers flying over his device. Together, they built a trap, an energy beacon that would shine brighter than the core itself. If the plants were drawn to power, they would come here first. As they worked, Ray kept one eye on Carol. Suspicion still lingered. He couldn't ignore the way Carol's hands shook, the way his eyes darted as though listening to voices only. He could hear finally, Ray asked, They're whispering again, aren't they? Carol froze, his shoulders stiff. Then he nodded slowly. Yes, they never stop. Even now I hear them. They know we are planning. They tell me to give up, to surrender, to let them grow. Ray's jaw tightened. Then fight. It ignore them. Carol looked at him with tired eyes. You do not understand. Their voices are not just sound. They press into my mind like roots digging into soil. Every moment I feel weaker. Ray studied him, then tossed him a small communicator. Then hold on to that. Focus on my voice instead. As long as you're with me, you're not alone. Carol stared at the device, surprised. For the first time, a faint spark of hope lit in his eyes. Humans, he whispered. You fight not only with weapons, but with spirit. The ground trembled suddenly, dust falling from the ceiling. Ray jumped to his feet, weapon ready. They're coming, he said. Carol checked the beacon, his hands trembling. It's almost ready, just a little longer. From the cracks in the tunnel walls, glowing roots pushed through, thin at first, then thicker, twisting like serpents. They crawled toward the beacon, pulsing with hunger. Ray fired shots, slowing them but not stopping them. Faster, Carol. He shouted, They're not waiting! Carol's fingers flew, his voice shaking. Almost done, almost! The beacon activated with a sharp hum. A wave of bright light filled the tunnel. The vines stopped, quivering, then turned toward the beacon as if hypnotized. They rushed toward it, hundreds of roots pouring in, wrapping around the device, pulling at the wires. Ray and Carol backed away, watching the trap unfold. Ray held the detonator in his hand, sweat dripping down his face. Now, he whispered. But Carol grabbed his arm. Wait, if you explode it too soon, they will survive. We must let them drink deeper. Ray hesitated, watching as more and more vines wrapped around the beacon. The light flickered as the plants absorbed the energy, glowing brighter, stronger. He clenched his teeth, every instinct screaming to push the button, but he forced himself to wait. The tunnel shook violently, the roots swelling, pulsing with too much power. Their glow turned blinding, like fire inside glass. Carol's voice rose in panic. Now! Do it now! Ray slammed his thumb down. The tunnel erupted with fire and thunder. The blast shook the ground, tearing through stone and metal. The vines shrieked, not with sound, but with a violent psychic wave that stabbed into their minds. Ray staggered, clutching his head. Carol fell to his knees, screaming. When the smoke cleared, the tunnel was half collapsed. Charred roots twitched on the ground, broken and burned. For the first time, they did not heal. They lay still, smoking. Silent, Ray helped Carol to his feet, both of them breathing hard. It worked, Ray said between breaths. Carol stared at the smoking remains, his voice low. No, it only slowed them. The roots you see are only the beginning. The main body is deeper, stronger, waiting. Ray tightened his grip on his weapon. Then we do it again. Bigger, louder. Until the thing has nothing left to eat. Carol looked at him with both fear and admiration. You human? You never stop. Ray's eyes hardened as he stared into the dark tunnels. Neither do they.